Welcome to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. Like any good marriage, we will debate, evaluate, and sometimes quarrel about how privacy and security impact business in the 21st century.
Hi, Jody Daniels here. I'm the founder and CEO of Red Clover Advisors, a certified women's privacy consultancy. I'm a privacy consultant and certified informational privacy professional providing practical privacy advice to overwhelmed companies.
Hello, I'm Justin Daniels. I am a shareholder and corporate M&A and tech transaction lawyer at the law firm Baker Donaldson, advising companies in the deployment and scaling of technology. Since data is critical to every transaction, I help clients make informed business decisions while managing data privacy and cybersecurity risk. And when needed, I lead the legal cyber data breach response brigade.
And this episode is brought to you by Ding, Red Clover Advisors. We help companies to comply with data privacy laws and establish customer trust so that they can grow and nurture integrity. We work with companies in a variety of fields, including technology, e-commerce, professional services, and digital media. In short, we use data privacy to transform the way companies do business. Together, we're creating a future where there's greater trust between companies and consumers. To learn more and to check out our best-selling book, Data Reimagined, Building Trust One Bite at a Time, visit redcloveradvisors.com. So, Justin, I have an interesting fact for you. I was reading a LinkedIn social post that talked about podcast formats. And apparently, this post was talking about how it's cool now to have a co-host podcast. And I thought, oh, well, look at us. We've been doing it this way for 3.5 years. So we were ahead of the times. Why are you laughing at that?
It's fun.
Why is it funny?
Because our podcast is strange and unique because it's the two of us.
That was part of their whole theme, was that the people who have co-hosts that really gel and jive together make it really interesting. And those are the podcasts that are doing well. So see, look, we're cool.
Indeed. All right. Well, we have a great episode here for you today, and I'm going to introduce our guests. So today we have Owen Denby, who is the General Counsel of SecurityScorecard, a late-stage venture capital-backed cybersecurity company. He is a veteran of SaaS technology startups and a corporate M&A lawyer by training. Owen, good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Jody, Justin, thank you. Thank you for having me today. Excited to be on the podcast and to chat with you about some interesting cyber and privacy topics.
And apparently you've joined us today where Justin has brought his late night DJ voice. Well, Owen, we always start our episodes by understanding how people got to where they are today. So can you share more about your career evolution?
Certainly, yeah. I started off in similar to Justin in private practice and probably also similar to Justin and doing more transactional work in M&A. And I always was more interested kind of in the stuff that my clients were doing. I love kind of, structuring merger agreements and that kind of stuff, but I was way more obsessed with operations than anything else. And I thought some of the cool stuff that was happening, I was kind of kicked out of the room for. I'd get to the point where the deal signs, and then I would miss out on some of the, some of those operational decisions and structuring conversations, after a deal closed. So a couple of years ago, I went in-house to another late stage health tech company that was acquired by United Healthcare in B2B SaaS in the healthcare space. And from there, once that company was integrated, Rally Health, I saw an opportunity to get into the cyber world with SecurityScorecard, and it's been a fascinating ride. Learning about a new industry and getting to work with some really talented folks. So that's where I am now.
Well, you certainly picked an industry that is changing all the time and has quite a lot of activity in it.
Characters to boot.
Characters, lots of characters.
So, Owen, I thought where we would start the conversation is the security scorecard is known for the scorecard. And so maybe you could talk us through exactly what scorecard is and how does it help customers evaluate their security posture in a meaningful way?
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's such an intuitive product. At least our core ratings product is very intuitive. So if you're thinking about, Moody's or S&P, doing ratings, doing credit ratings, we do security ratings. which was an industry that didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago, that we've pioneered. So it's very simple, right? It's the core use case is vendor risk management, and banks use us for diligence, but it's looking at the security posture of, I think at this point we rate over 12 million companies continuously, to see, a simple A through F score. What can we tell based on public data, how these companies are doing in terms of their overall security programs. So from that, the company's evolved, and that's a very intuitive way to say, okay, if my vendor is, has an F score, that's something I have to pay attention to, and how are we remediating and or dealing with that. But from that point, we've done more and more in terms of services and expanding the product base to really not just be sort of scores itself, but remediation services, tabletop exercises, incident response. And it's really cool to see how the platform has developed over time to really, to help CISOs and to help security professionals think about their overall risk profile.
I feel like, Justin, you had something you were going to ask.
I guess one follow-up question I wanted to ask, Owen, is when Security Scorecard does do the scorecard rating, can you give us a little window into the process? I think it has a lot to do with the company and their ports and how they connect with the internet, because as we all know, that's a primary pathway for our threat actors to weave their way in and do their mayhem.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's an algorithm that pulls in information, certainly from ports and from hacker channels, and puts this all through an algorithm into a simple score that we can figure out a way to digest, where the vulnerabilities are, and we're able to sort of aggregate a lot of the vulnerability data that's out there into a very simple and understandable way to talk about the overall score, but then breaking down from there, how you can remediate different aspects of your security posture. And it's great certainly for your own company, but really the great use case and really where the threats are, to your point, Justin, are from third and fourth parties. So how do you manage that landscape? That's the real challenge that we address.
Well, speaking of third and fourth parties and other vendors in the ecosystem, SEC security rules are a really big, popular topic. And how do you see these SEC rules impacting cybersecurity hygiene for privately held companies, because they are often vendors to publicly traded companies?
Yeah, and I I laugh a bit, Jody, because this is an interesting topic, and I grill Justin on this all the time. We go back and forth because I say, well, I'm a private software GC. Why should I care? And the reality is, if you are a private company and you are anywhere on the supply chain, right, to supplying things up to public companies, which for most sophisticated private companies, that's just a given, that those are your customers, that's where your revenue is coming from. You're going to see more and more flow down requirements as these rules and regulations and the enforcement of them really ramps up. So it's if you are in the supply chain, it doesn't, even though you're not directly reporting into the SEC, what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis is more and more flow downs, right? Like how our public company customers are thinking about this is how we have to think about it as well.
I'm curious, of your privately held companies, are you starting to see a shift in how they're addressing what might be on their scorecard? Or are they still in I'm a privately held company and those rules don't apply to me, and I haven't gotten the push down yet?
It's interesting that I think that and it makes a lot of sense. I think that the Biden administration and folks are really targeting the bigger public companies that have more resources, right? There's a theme of inequity across the security landscape where the biggest companies have the most security professionals to address a lot of this stuff, right? And one of the cool parts of my job is I get to talk to CISOs, on a pretty frequent basis, because that's a lot of our customer base. And the thing that they're seeing really is that they have to take a more active role in really, shepherding along some of the private companies to say, okay, we've noticed these vulnerabilities, not only in your security posture, but some of the vendors that you're working with, and what are you doing to address those issues? And obviously, you don't have all the resources in the world, so we can give you reporting, we can sort of point things out that are vulnerabilities to you, we can be a resource to you. because ultimately it's the supply chain issue. Everything is flowing up to these bigger companies that, they have more resources to address this kind of stuff, and they have to kind of help raise the bar across the board for some of these smaller institutions as well.
So, Owen, with the SEC rules, when you read them, a key aspect of it is there's a reporting requirement if you have a material breach. And when you read the rules, it says some information that would have a substantial likelihood of impacting an investor's decision. And how do we apply that to cybersecurity? So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your thoughts around what an approach to materiality might look like.
Well, yeah, Justin, I came on the podcast today because I was hoping you'd answer that question for me, because I've been scratching my head about materiality, and I still have no real idea. I mean, to me, if I'm sitting in the seat of a chief information security officer, a chief information officer, and we have a breach, what am I looking towards to make that determination? Certainly I'm calling up my outside attorneys, and I'm working with my general counsel, but we don't have enough data or benchmarks to make that determination. Like what constitutes materiality? Where are the what are the dollar thresholds? What are we seeing from other companies that are reporting these kinds of breaches? So if anything, I'm probably taking the cautious view and reporting. But over time, I think it'll be really interesting to see as we get more and more of these filings, to get more consistency in terms of what's reported and what's not, and pulling in some of those benchmarks will be really instructive from my perspective.
Well, let's turn and talk about my favorite topic, which is privacy. And Owen, how often are you seeing privacy overlapping with the deployment of scorecards, professional services, and software products?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think that, and I mean the podcast is a perfect example of this. The idea of cyber and privacy are so interconnected; they're almost inseparable in my view. I mean, our customer base, for example, I mean, we have to be leaders in security. I mean, our internal security is paramount to us, because it involves customer trust, and there's a privacy aspect that's just intrinsically linked. So we do our best to have sort of world-class privacy practices, and as our services have rolled out into kind of different use cases, handling more sensitive data, let's say on an instant response, we have to be very, very careful in terms of how we're working through those issues, and how we're handling confidential information and personal information for our customers. So I think it's a more heightened scrutiny for us, even though we're not in a overly regulated industry. It's just the fact that cyber and privacy are so key, and it's so key to customer trust to get it right.
Are you seeing any impact from the flurry of new privacy laws on how companies are looking at their security posture, or their, who else might be a part of the team that might be using the scorecard?
Well, I'm going to bring up my favorite trite topic that everyone's talking about these days, and that's AI. Because that's where we're really seeing the biggest push. I mean, we're in the end of our quarter, and our customers, are looking to us for guidance on our AI tools, because they want to make sure that, we are handling inputs securely. We are thinking ahead of the curve in terms of how are we eliminating bias from the AI that we use in our platform. So that's the biggest hot topic, I think. And I know be curious to hear your views on it, because I know everyone's talking about AI these days, but I do see, especially with some of the new European guidance and regulations that are coming out, I think that it is the number one topic that's top of mind for our customers. So just thinking about it in an intelligent way to make sure that we have best practices.
Wouldn't be a podcast without AI.
Yes. And speaking of AI, how does Security Scorecard view AI, and how it may influence its product offerings to its customers?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's such a powerful tool, and you have to be obviously careful and have guardrails around it. But we see a future in which, instead of going through tabs and navigating things, imagine if you had an AI insert, or you had some sort of a chat bot that could easily answer any question that you wanted to know about your security posture and the security posture of your entire third-party attack surface. So thinking about that in an intelligent way, like making it so user-friendly that you'd be able to do that. If you're a CISO and you just log into the platform and you can easily ask questions and get answers, but from our perspective, it's how do you manage that that incredible user experience that we're trying to create while being sensitive to a lot of the privacy and security issues around that. I think that is where a lot of companies are heading in SaaS, and not just us, and not just in security. So finding ways to do it that's both enriching the user experience, but being very cognizant, for your customers, and creating trust for them that you're doing it in a smart way with the right guardrails in place.
So I have a thought, and I'd love to get Owen your thought, and Jody maybe you as well. Is so Owen, from our security hat, we have the CIA triad, and most of the time we deal with confidentiality breach or availability ransomware. And I'm wondering how much you're starting to see or hear, or it will come where with AI, CISOs are starting to worry about, well, gee, if somebody puts bad data into the training model or into the learning reinforcement part of it, and now that bad data is giving me crappy results, that will undermine trust in AI. And that goes to the integrity of data, which doesn't get talked about as much, but that may be coming into vogue. But what do you guys think about that?
I think they call that poisoning of data, which I thought was just a really fascinating phrase and risk that I don't think most people are talking about. And it's absolutely real. I mean, if I was a bad actor, I would try and poke holes wherever I can. And that's a really interesting one to get to the heart of whatever the model is meant to be doing.
Yeah, it's a two-sided problem, right? Because there are two risks, there are two things to think about in my view. A lot of our customers are focused on both sides. It's the inputs and the data and where that's coming from, and also the outputs and the hallucinations and everything that comes from that. So I think you have to think about it holistically. Like it's not just one risk, it's really two. It's two different things that you're trying to solve for.
Oh, and what are some of perhaps the big themes of challenges that you're hearing from companies? We talked about AI. There are these SEC security rules and the plethora of privacy regulations. But I'm just curious, do you see kind of a common theme, any specific areas that companies keep trying to tackle?
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of focus, certainly with there's an increasing regulatory scrutiny and focus on cyber. We get to chat with a lot of CISOs and sort of see what's top of mind. But certainly there's the thought in the CISO community that after the SolarWinds case, where their CISO was prosecuted by the SEC, for fraud and internal controls failures. There's a thought of, okay, I could be at risk. My job, I could be personally liable for things that my company's doing. So that has folks, not sleeping so well at night. There's this idea of okay, well, with these new cyber rules, how am I being more prepared, and how do I sort of guard against that? So a lot of folks are thinking about this supply chain issue where I have to expand sort of my continuous monitoring of a lot of these vendors. And that's another sort of theme too that we hear a lot from CISOs, is that it's not, typically it was the kind of thing where you'd review your software once a year. You'd look for vulnerabilities, you do a review of all your vendors, but that's not enough. It's not, even quarterly isn't enough. It has to be something that's more continuous. Yeah, and I think that there's a focus now, especially with the new SEC rules of making a cyber program that's more objectively defensible. So that's kind of bringing in KPIs, metrics to show not only where your posture is currently, but how you're improving over time, because there just is a lot of regulatory scrutiny, and not just from the SEC, from the FTC as well, from other agencies that are very, very focused on cyber. So it's a challenging regulatory and legal landscape, and it's how companies are responding and thinking about through those things, in a corporate capacity, but also if you're in the CISO role, you're worried about your own role and your own liability.
So, Owen, I wanted to ask you a question, kind of taking you back to your general counsel days that predated the scorecard, and maybe give us a sense, maybe from your experience or the other in-house attorneys that you know, what is it like these days as an in-house legal department to be stretched in so many different directions, and now you have this confluence of events with privacy regulation, cybersecurity everywhere, and now AI and what it means. And as an in-house lawyer or general counsel, it's like you're drinking from a fire hose, even more than usual. How do they contend with that?
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
I've always approached it in sort of these new regulatory challenges as I've always been very intellectually curious about it. But that doesn't help me on a day-to-day basis because, there's things that we have to kind of really focus on. I mean, I think it's just a question of prioritization and a lot of what we try to do. Obviously we're trying to keep up, but we're thinking about things in sort of a market setting, like what are our competitors doing? What are other folks in our space doing? How are they thinking about these issues? We do a lot of benchmarking against, where is our compliance program versus others? Are we at a market standard? Because, with privacy and cyber, it's a continuously evolving process. And I think that thinking about your customers and their problems first is usually the way to go. I mean, it's certainly from a revenue perspective, but there are issues that your buyers and your customers are caring about the most, and you want to be at the forefront of all of those. And you don't have all the resources in the world, so starting there is usually the best point I found.
Knowing what you know in the security space, what would be your best security tip that you might offer your non-security friends when they're curious what you do all day?
I was gonna steal Justin's and say, "Show me the documentation." So, but that one's already taken. So I'll go back to the one that I constantly talk about in a variety of contexts. But I think it's preparedness. I think that the more that you can do now, or if you're worried, you're future proofing for some kind of incident to happen by having a law firm on retainer that's going to help you if when that happens, like having all of those, having a very clear playbook if something goes wrong, if there is an unfortunate incident, and practicing that, and having a really tight relationship with your CISO to know exactly what steps you have to take if something unfortunate happens. Like you can't be too prepared, and especially in this sort of, not only just the attacks are getting more sophisticated, but as the regulatory climate really increases and the scrutiny increases, the pressure is going to increase. So, certainly preparedness is my number one tip.
Always a good one. Be prepared. Can't help but have musical songs in my head.
Yes. So, Owen, when you are not helping Security Scorecard have the cyber message to everyone, what do you like to do for fun?
Well, I was going to ask you both who you're picking for the national championship in basketball, because as we're taping now, I think we have 30 minutes to the deadline. I'm not totally decided yet, so
I'm gonna
Charity?
leave it all to Justin.
Charity?
No, I'm leaving it all to
I want to
you.
hear what you have to say.
I have absolutely no
Do you
idea.
think it'll be the Cleveland Browns?
Oh, go away. I don't know.
Well, just say North Carolina
North Carolina,
because
North Carolina.
Sydney has blue and white shoes.
because she has blue and white shoes.
There you go.
All right, there we go.
There, Jody's real live AI.
So I'm picking UConn. I know
Oh, well,
that's
had you told me
pretty
that was an
generic.
option, I would have
Yeah,
picked my home state.
Well,
there you go.
make it fun.
Yeah, I'm also from New England, so I grew up in Rhode Island, so sort of close to home there. I have two young kids, so I don't really have any hobbies. I'll be honest. We're taking our oldest to Disney World next week, and that's kind of the big
Please
one.
say hi to Mickey Mouse for me and have some
I
Mickey
certainly will.
waffles.
You're
I
going to see
certainly
Mickey
will.
later this summer.
That's not the point.
Okay.
Yeah,
Owen's
and
going, and he should say hi
Yes.
if he's willing to say hi.
And
for
I'm
me.
going to tell him as one parent to another, bring your walking shoes because you'll be doing some walking.
and Justin promised that we'd play pickleball at some point. So I love to, when I have time, I love to get outdoors and anything with hiking, biking, that kind of stuff. So I think that Justin had a really intense biking trip with another fellow scorecarder. So I know that he's into competitive sports. So next time
That's an understatement. Well, Owen, it's been a true pleasure having you here. If people would like to learn more and connect, where should they go?
Security Scorecard. Check us out. Go to our website. You can learn a lot there. Happy to answer any questions that anyone has. You can always email me, odenby@securityscorecard.io, if you have questions about the platform, or if I can direct you to the right folks that can help you. We love chatting with folks and trying to understand their security challenges and how we can help. So, but thank you so much for having me today. And maybe someday I'll get invited back. I don't know.
Might depend on the pickleball.
Who knows? I better throw the game in that in that sense then.
Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check us out on LinkedIn. See you next time.